it's amazing where it's gone and how quickly it's moving. One of the points in our talk with Elliot Vigil was, I said, hey, the guys that are getting in on AI early are the guys that are going to be. He's like, well, it was 6 years ago. Those were the guys that got in early.
Right.
And hey, fair point. Maybe I'm one of the guys that thought I got in early, and because I hadn't been on it for 6 years. I might have a year and a half. I don't know where that would put me on the curve. Hopefully, a little ahead, anyway.
And then there's another one. I use Perplexity, just like ChatGPT, which it's a little bit more specific with the numbers, if you will.
Okay.
So that's just another. It costs you, I think, $200 a year. But some of the projects I'm working on, it has saved me days and days of research. You can get it in like a minute. It's just
it's amazing.
Learn how to ask the right question.
And tell it what you want. Like, so I asked a guy that uses a lot for some tips, and he was like, look, if you're asking it to do something, tell it to be an expert in that field. Hey, you're a civil engineer. How do I do a bypass? You're a author. How, write a book. It's amazing, just by telling it these little things, what the higher functionality you'll get out of it, rather than it sitting there looking from its perspective, I guess. I don't know that to me, it refined a lot of my search.
Yeah. I mean, it'll even give you a chart of accounts. Say, I want to start this kind of a business. I need an accounting system. Give me create a chart of accounts, and it'll even do that for you.
That's amazing. That's, hey, I need some of that going right now. All right. So let's get into a couple of these.
Well, I've been in the business. I've been attached to the industry for 60 years. Okay. Starting in high school, basically. And I've grown several companies. I've sold several companies as a leader in some companies. I was very involved with the growth and the merger and acquisition side of the industry. The only other industry I've been involved with outside of equipment is the pipeline maintenance industry for oil and gas. And a friend of mine asked me to come in and help him grow that. And I did that, and then we sold it. And that's when I had some time on my hands. And so that's when I did the podcast. I wrote a book, and then some guys asked me to get back into the M&A industry with them. I did that with them for a year. And then I said, I can do this by myself without sharing commissions. And I guess in the last few years, I've done about 160 million in transactions. So
wow.
I've been very fortunate. And, Charlie, I haven't left my house. I work out of my house, and I haven't had to visit these people. A lot of it's referral from other friends and stuff like that. And you just got to crunch the numbers and go out and market it in different ways, be it on LinkedIn. I do some direct mail. I do some direct contacts of regional companies who might want to grow to that area, that type of thing. So
that's pretty amazing.
The whole industry's been very rural. Not to mention that and there's nothing wrong with this, but they run so much stuff through the business that when you try to get an adjusted EBITDA number or non-recurring owner expenses, I would say, when you got 3 kids on the payroll for health insurance and car insurance and cell phones and all that kind of stuff, it's okay to do that. But then when you go to sell it, you got to be able to track that to quantify that those are the real numbers that won't be recurring, that will increase the cash flow of the business.
Sure. No, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And I've learned more about cash flow in the last year with this business. You just always think, you work your way down a P&L as you work in a corporate, as you work for somebody else. You have your top line numbers, then you fight like hell to take some of that down to the bottom line. But it's, in the small business world, it's not. So it's more about cash flow. If I can get that cash flow in the right place, I don't even have to necessarily hit my break even numbers, because everything's hitting at the right time. I've got the cash flow moving when I need to write the check. The money's coming in, but it's it catches up, right? It doesn't build that way forever.
Right. And some smaller companies don't even do their depreciation until the end of the year. And when I got into the pipeline maintenance business, it was to prepare that business, to grow it, and to sell it. And so on our monthly financials, we had the EBITDA number every month as to where we were tracking. So we wouldn't have to go back and research all the shit to say, let's go back and calculate. You know, it was
Oh
just
yeah, trust me.
one of the standard stuff that we did.
Yeah. Now, how at that level does that kind of data roll up? Because I know at the branch manager level, like, you know, the first 5 days of the month, I'm cleaning up last month. I'm the one researching those, you know, expenses and figuring out why something's in one bucket needs to go to the other. And I will say for United Rentals, you know, they had a very robust, software that made it relatively easy. It's still a pain, but it was easier than I saw it at other companies.
Right. Well, always one of the targets was to close as fast as possible, you know, and if you can close in a week, then you can actually see where the problems are so that you can start adjusting for that month that you're already in and starting and see, like in pipeline maintenance, there's a ton of labor. Okay. And if you have guys in the yard, but if they're not out working, that's still an expense. It's unbilled labor and it's a real cost and it can kill you.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've got a buddy right now, his work's dried up and he's paying 2 crews to sit idle.
Exactly.
And, you know, I didn't really think about it, but you know, he made the point when you've got good people, you got to fight, you know, tooth and nail to keep them. And I've been preaching that from the top side. I guess I never thought about it from that end. You know, if they'd let me go back, I would, but I think they were after my 5-year plan, going back twice, I think they were ready for me to get out. So. They let me come back on game days every now and then. That's about it.
Let's just say I wasn't asked to leave, but I left.
Yeah, right. So talk about, you know, what you've seen the industry now going back to rental specific, what you've seen in the industry in the time you've been in. I mean, if you're in your 70s now, what, 50 years of watching it evolve?
Well, there's so many things that have changed, Charlie. And so, like, I would say one of the biggest parts of the industry now is aerial equipment. You know, so when I was coming in, aerial was really just getting started. I mean, it just didn't exist. And now you've got specialty houses that do nothing but that. And so our business was kind of like contractors, do-it-yourselfers, medical, parties, everything. We had 17 locations all over South Louisiana. And so I migrated into bigger equipment as I changed jobs over the years. Okay. And then after Hurricane Katrina, when I opened up my own company with a couple of guys, I knew exactly what we needed to have, quite frankly. I knew how many compressors, which, you know, had slowed down a bit, compact equipment, aerial equipment, some earth moving equipment. You know, we didn't have any dozers, but we had some good sized excavators. And the key to that business is that we were located right next to the New Orleans Superdome, downtown New Orleans. I mean, right next door. And we would have customer parking for free on game days. We'd move all the equipment into a corner, and then the customers come in for free. And those who weren't customers paid $20, which helped pay for the beer and all the food that we gave to the customers. So
You can't beat that. That's wonderful. What a setup.
Think about how equipment has changed. There's so many more safety features. The equipment's so much smarter. You know, with telematics, you can do so much with that. I mean, it's just the world has changed over the years and just gotten better. I'm not big on all this electric stuff, quite frankly, that's coming into the market.
Are we getting into the final tier 4? That's what we're talking about. Yeah.
Well, I mean, just in general, you know, I always picture a skid steer in the middle of a job site that runs down and stops. And how are you going to get it back to the charging station versus grabbing a 5-gallon can of diesel and have it back running in 10 minutes?
That's true. That's true. But now they got them like the little Roombas, you know, they sense that they're getting low and they tell you, hey, either you take me back to the base or I'm going back. You know, my golf cart, that derated itself a mile from my house down to 10 miles an hour and said, that's the only way you can make it home. It didn't know how far home was, but I guess it's got a certain distance that let me limp it on back.
And again, technology and equipment's much smarter all the way around.
It is. And just in my brief time, the telematics, what we were able to do with that, you know, specifically to sewer bypass, you know, back in the day, you'd have to have a whole crew, you know, sitting with these pumps 24 hours a day.
Right.
And now the way we've got it set up, you put the right gear in these bypasses. I can tell you your flow. I can tell you, you know, your run cycles, your RPMs. I can tell you how that pump breathing day in and day out. And, you know, the right guy can do that on multiple projects. And that's, that's been amazing to watch for me. But kind of taking it back and piggybacking off that question a little bit, when did, previously it was, going to the aerial equipment, I would assume if somebody had that, aerial 120-foot boom, they're the guy in that area that did anything that needed that 120-foot boom until somebody said, well, let me buy 5 of them and try to rent them. Is
Right.
that, how did that, that must have been the absolute Wild West, just seeing, hey, would this be better for the customer if I bought it and they rented from me? And then once you're rewarded with that decision and how it just blows up, it
Yeah.
must have been incredible.
I remember us buying 2, back then it was called Selma lifts out of Selma, California. And they were like, were rough terrain, 32-foot height. And that was the newest thing that had hit the city. And unfortunately, my dad had the concept that bigger equipment, bigger debt, bigger receivables, bigger maintenance. And so we decided after having them a while, we got very big into cars and trucks, quite frankly. And at one point had a fleet of about 300 vehicles, all from Ford. I used to spend my Friday nights repoing vehicles, gonna bang on it he may have a gun, who knows? So I figured with Mother Nature, he's gonna have to go to the bathroom sooner or later. So I waited, and finally he got out and went into this apartment complex, and I jumped in and took all his shit. And
I'll tell you what, on a separate note, one underserved market here is all rental companies have walked away from the homeowner. They used to all, maybe not center around the homeowner, but they took special care to have certain things that homeowners would use from time to time. And it's just gone, unless you want to go to Home Depot or one of those guys and pay out the nose.
Yeah. Well, during the pandemic, those Home Depots thrived because people were working at home. And so suddenly they had all these projects to do. And so that's the kind of thing, electric jackhammers that anybody can use, floor sanders, just the stuff that you barely see in today's world, quite frankly. But those
I
are
wonder,
wonderful things for us.
I wonder how they do with like
It takes care of all the shit.
yeah, yeah. Anything you don't want to do rolls to his desk. Yeah. Yeah.
So he was the leader of the company, but like, let's open a branch in Texas. So somebody has to go there, get permitted, get a place, get all the supplies to the people, help hire the people, all those kinds of things.
Oh yeah.
So the place in Mississippi, they had an existing office and there's all this beautiful furniture in there, boardroom tables and stuff. And guys, I said, how much do you want for all this? He said, this stuff's worth about $20,000. And I looked around and I said, well, I can replace it all for $4,000. And he said, I'll take it.
Yeah. Yeah. I fear that I may be in a similar situation there because I had a buddy of mine, in fact, a Marine colonel that lives in New Orleans. He's on one of those logistics bases. They're really, really good guy, but he does woodworking on the side. So he got some second growth cypress from down there and made this absolutely wonderful live edge bar top. And it cost not quite 20,000, but it wasn't far off. And if this place goes under, I somehow or another, that bar top's coming with me.
It's called excluded assets.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, if you owe the money to the bank and you exclude anything, I doubt it. We'll see. We'll see. They're going to get their bite if we get there.
Yeah.
All right. So going back, let's talk a little bit now about the consulting that you're doing. I think you and I communicated via email that I've started a consulting business as well, but mine is based on selling. So I've got a strategy of fleet gapping for very specific, bypass customers that work on a very specific size of project. I can basically come in and say, okay, this is where your business is now. This is where you want to go. These are the size of jobs you want to go. These are the amount that are coming out. This is the right amount of pumps, the sizing of the pump that will get everything that you need. You won't have to go out and rent on these projects unless you go outside of, this little comfort zone we've built and, basically define that strategy and then define the pump that they'll need in that strategy and then sell them that pump. So I think that's kind of different. So your consulting is on kind of more the leadership, the growth, the scaling. Is that correct?
Yeah, and startups, when I was with Buckner, I ended up doing, I call it a new store opening plan and also a transitioning plan. If we bought a company, there's certain things that need to happen. But if we're going to go into another market, everything from the scratch pads for the salesman, you know, getting permitting and all those kind of things that had to happen. So somebody comes to me and says, I'm thinking about starting a rental company. I can give them this book, so to speak, about all the different aspects that you'll have to do in order to start numbering systems, things that people don't think about, software that you have to acquire. It's very rare you find somebody in this industry now that doesn't have a software package attached to them.
Oh, yeah.
Some of that consulting right now, I'm actually in on 3 advisory boards for companies that are in the equipment industry. One of them is called chassis.ai. And all these guys found me on LinkedIn, by the way. And it's an AI concierge service for sales teams that they can track every sales call, phone call, email, text, whatever. So people don't have to spend their nights writing up reports and all that kind of stuff. Another one we just launched called Equip Hunter, which is a new used equipment sale website that has some AI features in it that we think is kind of a step above the way people have normally just gone onto a machinery trader and looked at hundreds of pieces of equipment. And then how do you know which one is really the one to buy?
So kind of a step up from Ralph's. I think that's what we use.
Right. And then the third one is a company called D-Rental, which is a lead generation company that we get contracts just to go to the D-Rental to order their equipment online. And then we get a small percentage for a transaction fee. So those are the 3 main ones that I'm involved with and stay pretty steady on right now.
Pretty neat. That is. That's, I guess I'm just not there yet. Nobody's going to pay me for my mind. So I gotta kind of find some back where I can get in. Well, I guess, I don't know, the fleet gapping is a bit of a mind, but it's really anybody could do it if they look close enough and really worked hard enough to figure it out.
And it just kind of depends on the project. If it's a straight M&A deal, work off a certain percentage of the sale, not including real estate if it's in California or Florida, because I'm not licensed there. If it's a consulting deal, depending on what I think time it's going to take, there may be an hourly fee. And there's been some of these new startups that I'm actually doing it for equity in the company.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Gee, it's going to take off. Then it's better for me to have shares than to record some income.
No, absolutely. You don't find a whole lot of people that are willing to see the forest through the trees and make those deals. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or that have the wherewithal, right? Not many people are in the position where they don't, need a paycheck coming in every week,
Right.
or can sustain operations long term without one anyway.
Right.
All right. So, yeah, I mean, I think we've talked great about how, the AI is starting to come in. I think we took it back to, kind of the beginnings of the industry in that, where you started to see things going from, okay, little skid steers and they to the big iron. That's not going to be just one company that owns it that goes around doing all these jobs. Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, most definitely. One of the funny, challenging jobs I had of the many that I've had was starting the cat rental program for the local cat dealer here. And so we took people from 4 different companies and got all their ideas together. I had my own ideas how things should work, but if we had a guy from Herc and if we had a guy from RSC, that could help and say, this is how we did it. And everybody brainstormed together to get the best ideas. So I opened 7 of those locations from scratch all over the state of Louisiana. So
That's all. That really, I mean, it's things like that. The experiences that can't be bought in a university, that can't be taught in a school. You can tell your stories, but it's, you'll have a gut that nobody else will have because of the things that you've seen. That there's so much talk about instinct in this business, but it's learned as much as it is inherent. There's people that parse information better than others, but the people that have the true gut instinct only got it by being there. Right.
Right. And Charlie, one of the things that I learned that in one of my management styles was to try to get people to think for themselves. You know, when somebody has a problem and they have a boss, they're going to go right to the boss, right? And so when that would happen with my guys, I would say, well, what do you think we should do? Well, what do you mean? I said, you're in the trenches with them. You know all the details of the thing. There's always two sides to the story. What do you think we should do? And get their true ideas and get them to get that brain churning a little bit. And sometimes they have great ideas and they help me to solve their own problem. And it's
Absolutely.
sometimes it might be, well, that's good. I think based on what I know, I think this is what we should do. But I said, don't ever hesitate to not try to solve the problem yourself, right or wrong. Okay. Make a decision and then tell me after the fact. If you need me, I'm always here for you. But
empowerment. Yeah. I mean, the Big Blue Machine made a push on that, but when you get that big, sentiment aside, it's just never going to make it all the way down. Right. It doesn't matter how good you are in your organizational, change, training, flexibility, anything. It's just never going to make it top to bottom all the way down.
Right.
I mean, would you agree to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I'm not saying they shouldn't try. I'm not saying you don't have these campaigns because it helps, it makes it down. I've never seen a complete transformative, change from top to bottom where you didn't have to kind of shave off, the dead meat along the way.
Right.
Let's see. I had a good question. It was a piggyback off one of them, and now of course, my wonderful memory is failing me here. But let's go back and talk kind of about the Rental Equip Talk Radio because I mean I think that's something special, and I don't know if maybe it might have been a little before its time, or maybe I don't know how you market something like I don't know how you market what I do. I mean, I'm just posting stuff on YouTube and LinkedIn and. Kind of like early in my sales career, I didn't know what I was doing. I was throwing darts everywhere, and eventually I found a few that stuck. Right? I guess in my mid 40s, I'm trying to be more strategic, but it's still ultimately it's however many darts you're going to send and how many are going to stick.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my marketing plan was pretty simple, in that I would post it on LinkedIn, okay, which is for free. Then I also run an ad on the RER reports every week to say what the subject matter was going to be, because it came out Monday. My show was Wednesdays at noon. So if it's something of interest, at one point I had a couple thousand listeners in several countries, quite frankly.
Is this streamed? It was streamed.
It was a live show, but then it would go to a podcast. So in other words, you could Google Rental Equip Talk Radio right now, and you'd find some of the shows that are still out there.
Okay. And what platform are they on?
Voice America is all I can tell you.
Okay. All right. I'll have to look into it because I don't even know where I would store any of my stuff. I don't know how long it stays on YouTube, which is where I'm putting it right now. But apparently,
even with the Rental Roadshow that we're doing, there's no real cost to storing the videos of people uploading a video tour of their business.
Makes sense. Well, somebody's storing it.
Yeah. Well, I'm not that technical. My daughter handles all of it. I'm just
the magic of the internet. It just
idea guy.
It's there. But I think you're starting to see a bunch of the talk about the impact of data.
People who have read the book said, "How the hell did you get through all that shit?" And the theory is never give up.
One day at a time. That's right.
I'll tell you the lowest point of my life. Okay. Was that I had lost a family business. We started another company with an investor. Over a weekend, I put together a business plan. We shrunk down to 4 locations. And after the first year, my dad and he had a falling out, and I left the company too. I was divorced, 3 kids, living in an apartment. I filed personal bankruptcy, business bankruptcy, and lost the company I had just started. I didn't have a job. I didn't own a car. And I'd gone for an interview with Robert Buckner at the New Orleans airport, the Hilton. And on the way back, I stopped at an intersection and I looked up and I said, here's where I am. And I just told you all this stuff, divorce, bankruptcy, kids, blah, 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 new job. And I looked up and said, what the hell else can go on? And Charlie, if I'm lying, I'm dying. Smoke started coming out from under the hood.
Oh, geez.
My borrowed car from my dad. And I said, life's got to be better. Yeah.
Pleasure. Stay in touch. Be on the show whenever you want, and best wishes to you.
Good. Appreciate it, buddy. Take care.
Something that's not talked about enough in the industry is
You get burned out. You're a pretty screwed up individual that is unbelievably buzzed up and put together.
that was something that happened to me.
We are all human beings. I actually have a chance now to understand how to be better prepared.
You don't have to talk to a person to get your whole job site off the ground and going.
My daughter, she can sniff out the AI instantly. They're not your country.
I told Anna, I was like, we're going to see real quick who runs a good restaurant.
It doesn't matter if it's golf or cooking. You will get results when you love what you do.
With Brandon, to go deeper in that, you and I have discussed, I think on the show before, burnout. That's a hazard in any industry, not just heavy equipment. So have you seen that on some of your side, Brandon?
People that don't burn out kind of wear the badge of honor that you didn't burn out, but I don't think that's a good thing. I will definitely be one of those guys that, I'll just show you how hard I can go, how hard I can grind. You give up a lot of things, you lose a lot of things, and then later in life, when you get older, you start realizing how stupid that was, how unfulfilling that was. And it's just one of those things that honestly just didn't know anything. The restaurant business, we were all brainwashed to think that was what was expected. Yeah, 60, 70-hour a week, 6 days a week, never going home for the holidays, no weekends off. The burnout was really bad in that industry. I've only been in it for a couple of years. I'm sure there's some burnout effect to it, especially when you start getting into a higher level. And, you start dealing with the Target, it's going to develop, IKEA of the world. But there's so much more pressure going into that. Those deal cycles are years and years long. I can see that burnout happen there. I think deal fatigue is probably the bigger thing that hits people in the real estate world, on the commercial side of just deal cycles. I hear it all the time. I do leasing, I do sell, but do a lot of restaurant work just because of obviously my background. But the old guys were like, man, used to be able to turn leases over in, a month, maybe 2 months tops. Now they're taking 6 months, right? For me, being new in it for 2 years, I don't know the difference, right? So I had to adjust to the deal cycle and just understand it. But even in my 2 years or right under 2 years, there are moments where I'm feeling that deal fatigue, just because it's just like, you feel like you got so much in your pipeline. You feel like you got all these things that you're supposed to do, but you just can't close it. 100%.
Something that's not talked about enough in the industry is, mental health and how burnout can affect your mental health and how it can lead to tragic outcomes. I mean, not necessarily physically tragic, but career tragic, career suiciditis, I call it. Sometimes we get a little bit of a burr under our saddle and make poor choices. I had a customer here at Swingaway Golf Club the other day ask me, it's like, man, I can tell you're stressed. How's your mental health? And, for somebody that I considered a friend to ask about, that's not something guys really do, Barry. And this is a D1 athlete, right? I mean, I didn't expect it. I was taken aback, and it really caused me to reflect a little bit on how everything's going. But, if we're not having these conversations, we're doing everybody a disservice, because it starts somewhere and then it circulates.
Absolutely. I will tell you, one of the weirdest things, I get the pleasure of connecting with a lot of different people. Thank you once again for the podcast today. Really unique people all over the world. And I get hundreds of messages a week, either directly through me or through my LinkedIn. And there has been a pattern that has been arising. I actually have people I got to follow up with today, and the mental health, the burnout, the stress, and I will tell you, I've been thinking a lot about it. And I think it's 2 things. And I think, again, in that kind of same vein of saying, like, I need to make something like that, because at some point it's going to manifest, right? At some point, something's going to happen that you don't even know what's going to come from those traumas, because you never address them, right? And again, I made my record being a Gen Xer. We grew up and you just stuff that shit down, right? But you don't talk about it, you don't bring it up, and everything's all over your door and fine. honestly, 47 years ago, something with the life. Just recently, I went to this. I called my sister and was like laughing, like told her kind of what I told you. She's like, yeah, of course, we actually kidding. We were screwed up. We just don't talk about it. But I also tell her how refreshing and freeing it felt. How I look forward to going back. I want to understand more about it. I have no shame about it. I don't feel weird about it. It's actually kind of like I'm at a point now in my life where self-reflection, the young people out there, and you do get to an age where you start realizing, you're on the downside, right? You want legacy. You want your life to mean something. If you're a parent, you really want to not screw your kids up, right? I mean, I think a lot of big part of being a good parent is not creating that something, right? Not creating bad people in the world, and also understanding they exponentially faster. It's learning, it's growing, it's getting better. So, I mean, I can remember in the beginning of this almost 4 years ago, it was almost kind of weird to use AI. Like, what do you mean you're using AI? Like, that's kind of, static, right? Like, when think about with Terminator days. Like, no, I mean, it's a tool, right? And when you were forced to budge, a gas combustible engine felt weird, right? Well, you have to adapt and you have to grow in these things. Technology pushes us. Now we're just in this unbelievable race that's happening. And if you aren't getting on this, you're going to be left behind so quickly that your jobs they won't exist, right? You have to adapt to everything around you and know how to use the tools as best you can.
Elliot, to kind of play devil's advocate here, as we see the next generation, the younger and younger guys get into that ordering decision maker position, what kind of trends are you seeing on those guys making their choice purely offline? I mean, I know Equipment Share, some of the big guys, you don't have to talk to a person to get your whole job site off the ground and going. Are you seeing the younger generation liking that, or are they still kind of afraid of that?
I'm going to play this two twists because I'm going to include each one of you, knowing Brandon's background as a chef, knowing your background in golf, and knowing my background in sales. Here's the biggest thing I'll tell you. I can go and play a golf simulator. It doesn't beat walking the course. I can go out and I can do Uber Eats. It doesn't beat a dining experience. I can go out and I can say, look, I've watched companies where they're like, look, we're going to go online. We're going to order up all of our equipment. Outstanding. Go do it. And then you open up the package and you realize it's not what I wanted. Right now, more than ever, talking about the golf course, talking about being a chef or in real estate, or speaking about how I work in sales, every one of us wants, and it's the biggest thing, we want a personal concierge and a /coach advisor. If you look, when you go onto Amazon, you're right. What are the ratings for that product? Why do you care about the ratings? Well, because I want a coach and advisor. Guess who that coach and advisor is? You have no idea. Are they an industry expert? Why am I taking restaurant advice from a 22-year-old who barely knows how to scramble eggs? I'll tell you who I want to take advice from when I go out to dinner, an executive chef like Brandon. When I go play a golf course, I don't want to have somebody where here's like, oh, well, it plays really good on a simulator. That doesn't mean a damn thing. Go to the golf course and I want to play with somebody who's played the golf courses. I want to meet up. I want to be with people who know it, experience it, and are going to engage me. And I think to your thing, to the point that you made of, will everybody be buying online? We will always find people that want the ease of buying online. Every person here, doesn't matter who's listening to this call, we've all gotten burned buying something online. Your Uber Eats showed up and it was tossed. It was all upside down. It looked terrible. You go out and you say, hey, this golf course was really highly rated, and you find out it's a par 3. You go out and you rent a piece of equipment and the company that sends it out was the cheapest company, and you realize it was a low quality piece of equipment that was not well maintained. Every single one of those affects the overall experience that customer has. And I really don't think that AI is going to replace it. And I actually think it will have people where they'll realize the value of a great interaction, because they're going to start trusting people that have the experience. It's not going to just be ratings. It's going to be someone you trust.
I couldn't agree more. You know, I had met some people from the Chick-fil-A company. We're talking about all the different nuances of the restaurants, and I thought we did, you know, inflation, raising prices, right? Like cost of food goes up constantly. Margins already raised or then what happened, especially in the local mom and pops, right? Like they're scared to raise the prices. So they just keep putting their margin and their margin and their margin. And next thing you know, you're actually got loss leaders, right? You know, one or two are okay if they bring the crowd in, they're spending the money on everything else. But at the end of the day, you got immediate full loss leaders. You're going to plug very quick, right? So something that I remember the CEO of Chick-fil-A saying to me that stuck with me to the core. If they're complaining about your prices and they're not coming in, two things are bad. One, your user experience or diner experience is not what it needs to be. Or two, they're not your country, right? I mean, if why I'm selling you the real estate, right? Like I'm sure there's a way, Zillow and all that, you can buy houses and all those things from there. Luckily, I'm not in the housing world on the commercial side, but like, if you don't want to meet and look at the space and allow me to talk to you about what it is, understand what we're talking about, you're the right customer. You know, and don't do what you need to do online and do all the things, that's fine. And there's a world for that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But in what I do, I facilitate experience and I handle whether I'm tenant repping or if I'm landlord repping. I'm working for somebody there and I'm doing the work and I'm creating an experience, right? I mean, I go imagine, you know, hey, here's this, I was in how big was space and then couldn't even tell you how much it is. You read inside a lease. No, you're not be able to articulate what's going on here. Maybe you know what they're needing, right? Which involves questions, discovery questions, and maybe not feel like a robot interacting with people. And in real estate, we really talk a lot about we are working in a way of trust-based long-term relationships, right? I'm not trying to sell you a piece of property or lease something to you or for you with the idea that I'm never going to see you again. I want it before, right? I want the experience to be as painless as possible. I want you to feel great about what's going on. And we all agree, I think, in a transaction, if both sides feel like they want it, and both sides feel like they have the contract from there, that's a successful deal. Or if both somebody like me in that world is to try to get to that deal every single.
It sounds like the answer is in person, you bring value. Where is the perceived value online? Is that what you agree, Elliot?
Absolutely. I think the interesting thing that'll end up happening, which they've already done studies on this, is they've looked at it and they've proven. They actually did a study with children, small children, and they took photographs of people's faces and they had different emotions on them. And they showed these images to children and they realized now that generations have gone by, children have less understanding of all of the different emotions. And there's happy, there's sad, there's a couple of different emotions, but there's not the same gamut of depressed, frustrated, angry, confused. They're just looped into mad. And as these changes have come around, I actually think when someone can go out and make those personal connections, it will enlighten people that they're actually seeing more emotions. And I'm going to tell you one of the biggest phrases, and we all know this: emotion causes motion. Yeah. If you're really passionate about something, you would be amazed how easy it transfers to somebody else. If you walk into a restaurant, if you walk onto a golf course and somebody's like, oh my gosh, you're going to love the ninth hole. That person rolls up to the ninth hole and they look at it differently. Oh my gosh, you're going to, the lamb chops tonight with the jam. Oh my Lord. And all of a sudden that person's like, wait, what? Yeah, I found this real estate piece of property. You must see it. And immediately somebody's saying that transfer of enthusiasm is where sales are made. And it'll become a hotter commodity as time goes by.
I think it's a skill that's not really inherently taught. I think a lot of times energy is something that you either have or you don't have. And I'm not saying it can't be learned, but when you learn something like that and you don't learn it in a way that isn't authentic, then it feels like that fake cup, that fake core, like to the point of what you're talking about your daughter. I mean, I am naturally a very high energy guy. I have been told so many times why he's so happy. My response is, why aren't you? Right? I mean, I woke up this morning, I got air in my lungs, the sun rose. I get to live another great day on this earth. Like, why aren't you happy? You know, and I'm infectious that way, right? I mean, I'm an energy guy, I'm a culture guy, and I believe in coming into my office or my restaurants back in the day. I say, important to everybody. We're knuckling, we're high fiving, how was your day? Great, what's going on? How's your family? Tell me about all these things. I'm a big believer in manifesting positive things in your life. If you think you can do something long enough and you put yourself in positions to do that, you can do it. I mean,
Amen.
I used to get the question all the time in the restaurant world, especially from the younger cooks, right? Like, Charley, how did you get here? How did you get from being a biscuit maker at Hardee's when you were 15 years old to owning 6 restaurants, to being an executive chef, working in all of these great restaurants? And quite frankly, my parents told me I could be anything when I was a kid, and I believed them. But I caught up to it and said, okay, it's all problem solving, right? Like, I mean, I literally at 46 years old, I decided to sell everything and get into real estate. That's crazy. With 4 kids, a wife, all the mortgage, everything I have. Everybody I knew was like, dude, you were nuts. But every one of them also who knew me said, anybody can do it, do it. And for me, it's a problem solving thing, right? If I get one that like I woke up one day and said, all right, like quit it, I'm gone. It was a 2-year process, right? I decided 2 years before I was going to do it. What are the steps to get there? Because at the end of the day, and that's all it is, a system that's really just writing down what you do every day that you're not even aware of, right? And get paralyzed in the fact that I got a brain system. You already have a system. You just didn't write it down. So to the point of, you open the door, right? And you come in, what's the first thing you do as you're going? Cut the lights on. Go over here and I do this. If I'm in the kitchen, I cut the wood on it, cut this, the ovens on it. That's the process. Just put it in paper, right? So for me, the way my brain thinks is, okay, I'm in real estate. But what do I have to do? First thing you got to do is you got to take a 60-hour course and you got to pass the test. Okay. Well, where do I get the course from? How do I start studying? Let me just start. 60 hours is going to happen whether I take this course or not. So let's go ahead and do it, right? So you knock that out. You take it, then you start lining up interviews. You interview, you find the place you want to be. You get in, you find somebody that's smarter than you, that's been there longer. You make sure to be personable enough to get them to like you want to train. And then you learn. And you ask as many questions as possible. Be the F and G, right? The F to G guy. That's what it stands for in the restaurant world.
Same thing every other restaurant. Yep.
In kitchen confidential. So, it's always been that thing of like, you only have a finite time to be that person, right? Because at some point, if you're here 10 years, you ask the same question, maybe this isn't for you, or maybe I don't have the patience. So utilize that time, make your procedures, figure out what it is from A to B to C to M. How do I become this? And I'm just going to do it. And that's just how I'm thinking about life. And now I'm on the cusp of being, considered a successful broker and doing the thing that I'm doing. And it's really the same way in one of the restaurant business. I put my head down, I busted my butt, I showed up, I'm physical, I'm survivable. I didn't, I partied best of them, but you know what? I'd leave the bar but sleep in the parking lot because I'm going to be late for work. I need to be there. And I think dependability is a huge part.
If you want to learn how to fly, you better jump out of the nest. I watch way too many people where they play safe. They take a job where somebody else controls their destiny and controls their success. Mad respect to both of you guys. I'm going to tell you right now, you got to jump out of the nest. You can spend your entire career, you can spend your entire life playing soft and playing easy. There's a lot of people that do that. The rewards go to those who are willing to take risks and play hard. You could make enough money that you could survive. Was it as good? Absolutely not. But you didn't die. At the exact same time, in 2020, during COVID, it happened. Everybody got rocked. And a lot of people don't remember June of 2020, the price per barrel of gasoline, of crude, went to negative $23 a barrel, which means in Texas, they quit pumping oil and they stopped hard. We had employees that worked for my company that had a ton of equipment out on rent, and they put all their eggs in one basket. Respectfully, they made a lot of money off of crude oil pumping. And when that market stopped, It wasn't that they didn't know how to sell, is that they didn't know how to diversify. And I would tell you the best thing you can do is you have to make sure that you take care of all the different types of customers. And you have to make sure you have a big enough diversification that not if it stops, but when it stops, you can pivot and you can adjust so that you survive and maybe even thrive in an ever-changing economy.
Brandon, how about some wisdom from the restaurant industry in
I
2008?
think Elliot knocked it out of the park. I mean, the diversification was exactly what I was going to say there. Honestly, I don't really have much to add. That's the thing that the moment you asked the question, and I was going to do the same thing 08 and 20, because, basically they were the same thing as far as shutting the world global economy down, and people were ready for it. I know in 2020, the buzzword was pivot, right? Everybody's pivoting. The same thing with diversification, right? I mean, in the aspect of understanding that one thing that we thought was going to be great isn't going to be great anymore. You can't just sit there and die. You got to get up. You got to get to work, right? I mean, you got to start thinking. The people that were like, "Oh, the government's going to take care of me," and doesn't, like that's going to stop. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they did. We're needed, and people, definitely benefited from that. And I definitely am not trying to say anything against that aspect of it. But I can't tell you how many people didn't have a way out to that. Didn't have a thought, or thinking that, okay, cool, they're going to pay me this money, and now I'm going to smoke weed and play Xbox all day long in the basement. No, bro. Like, that's going to stop eventually. And then what are you going to do? The people that I think came out of both those things in a good situation took the downtime, reflected, obviously licked their wounds, and then started thinking, what's next, right? Like, tomorrow's not promised anybody anything anyway. So what's next? What can I do to try to think about what's the next move? My wife just took a job in the trash business, right? She works for public services, and she's selling dumpsters and stuff like that. The very first thing we talked about in her looking at that career, recession, right? Like, that was something that we talked about immediately. Wow. I mean, trash is never going to stop happening. COVID, trash was usually abundant. Wait, trash was still happening, right? So it's like, okay, that's something that was funny for me in 08. We felt that restaurants were recession proof, right? I think every restaurateur that had a good brand was, adhered to the community, always felt like people would take those moments and make, maybe I'm not coming 5 days a week or 3 days a week, but I'm still going to come to the anniversaries. So you just had to try to gather more people. COVID showed us very quickly that we couldn't make it through that, right? All of a sudden, we're having the Cisco's, the US Foods of the world calling us and asking us to be grocery store because they had so much food that was going to die in their warehouses that now we're selling retail stuff. And a lot of people did that, and then all of a sudden we're selling 5-year plan to get there. But you know what's going to happen? 5 years is going to happen whether I think about this or not. So let's use that time to really hone in on what you got to do.
I will add one thing that in 2020, with respect to restaurants, Brandon, I told Anna, I was like, we're going to see real quick who runs a good restaurant. And those who, to your point, pivoted and got those alcohol specials, got those, meal in a box type cook at home things. Those who stepped up their to go programs are the ones who made it through that and came out on the other side healthier, almost like the Taco Bell of Demolition Man, if you remember that old movie. Well, guys, that's really all I've got.